Hey, this is another feature focus for FlipPilot, and we're talking about orphaned records. What does that mean? I'm glad you asked. That means basically when a record has gone into automated follow-up, so you set up an automated follow-up drip campaign for that record, it's no longer on your pipeline here. It's being handled through FlipPilot, automatically sending them messages, and you can bring it back onto the pipeline once that seller reaches back out to you and says, yeah, I'm interested, and then you're working the lead again actively. So while it's in the background being automatically followed up on, if it goes through all of your steps in your follow-up sequence, what happens? Right? What happens at the end of that sequence so that it's not just sitting there in limbo, that it's not just left orphaned and nothing happening with it. So this is another one of our efforts in FlipPilot to make sure that no lead is ever left behind or slips through the cracks. If you go to your follow-ups, you're going to see that there's 16 items here that need addressing. Scheduled contacts, I've got a lot of scheduled contacts past due, but over here on Orphaned Records, there's 5 orphaned records. So this badge up here on the follow-ups can tell me about these, so I can go in and address those. Okay, so I can see I've got 5 records that went through follow-up. It shows the last sequence that they were in, so that if you put them in a new one, you have some context about where you're going to put them into another follow-up sequence, or whether you're going to maybe even just add a new scheduled contact to call them and make the final determination whether that should now become a dead lead that you're no longer going to focus on at all. But I always encourage people to, unless there's a reason why you're never going to be able to buy that house, keep going in follow-ups. Keep adding them to different follow-up sequences, longer and longer ones where the messages are spread out further and further, but keep it going. So this one was keep in touch, sequence was the last one. So if I click on this record, I can go in here. If there's any notes, I can read those, see what was happening. But down here, I can take out a follow-up and then add to follow-up again if I want. Or if I choose to, so let's go ahead and take that out of follow-up because it's now an orphaned record anyway. And I can choose to either mark it as dead if I don't want to follow up anymore, or if I want to follow up again, I can just choose another sequence and add them to that sequence and run it through. I might even choose the same sequence if the messages were generic enough and I spread them out over time. But most likely just keep them going in follow-ups or mark them dead is what you're going to do. But this way, those records don't just fall off without you having addressed what you wanted to do with them. There's been properties that I followed up on that took me 8 years to get. And so, and I didn't do that with all of them. There were very few that I followed up with that long, but I really wanted that house and still ended up buying it after 8 years. But had I had FlipPilot then, automating a lot of this follow-up for me, man, I mean, how many more deals would I've gotten, that the seller was not motivated for the first year, second year, third year, but on the 8th year they were. Keep these things going and follow up. Let FlipPilot do it automatically in the background for you. That's the power of the system. And making sure that you don't have these orphaned records here that need to either go into another follow-up or mark them dead.